This is the Overachievers podcast for people who want success without the burnout. If financial stability feels like something you're always approaching but never quite reaching, then this episode is going to reframe what stability actually is, what it takes to build it, and how to stop starting from zero. Welcome to the Overachievers podcast with Keith Blakemore Noble. Because success shouldn't cost everything. Hello, welcome back. I'm Keith Blakemore Noble, the Overachievers coach, and this is where we explore what it really means to succeed commercially, sustainably, and without the patterns that quietly make it harder than it needs to be. Today's the final episode in Series 2, 12 episodes exploring the commercial and financial psychology of overachievement. We have covered a lot of ground. There's the hidden psychology of money, why overachievers undervalue themselves, the hard work ceiling, pricing discomfort, value versus effort, the visibility barrier, money and identity, detaching self-worth from income, earning without overworking, strategic value creation, and last episode, reading money as a feedback system rather than a verdict. In this episode, we bring all of that together around one important question. What does financial stability actually look like when it's built sustainably? I'm not talking about the version that requires constant maximum effort to maintain. It's not the version that produces income but costs health, energy, and quality of life in the process. I'm talking about the version that is genuinely stable. The version that holds up over time through the inevitable variations and setbacks that any business or career produces. That is what we are exploring in this, the final episode of Series 2. Now, if you haven't already, please do give us a follow or a subscribe on whatever your favorite platform is, wherever you're listening to this. Give us a like, a subscribe, give us a share as well. It's the easiest way to make sure you don't miss an episode and that other people can also find the episodes that you're finding so useful. Here is the thing about financial stability that most overachievers get wrong. They think of it as an outcome. Something you arrive at when the income is high enough, consistent enough, reliable enough. They see it as a destination that you reach after sufficient effort and sufficient success. But stability built that way tends to be fragile because it's built on the same model that created the pressure in the first place. More effort, more output, more income. Held together by constant activity and the ongoing requirement to keep all of the plates spinning. That, my friend, is not stability. That is controlled momentum. And controlled momentum, sustained without the systems and structures underneath it, that's exhausting to maintain, and it's very vulnerable to disruption. Real financial stability, that's different. It's structural rather than an effort. It's built into the model rather than maintained on top of it. It doesn't require maximum ongoing effort to sustain because it isn't primarily dependent on maximum ongoing effort to produce. The distinction matters enormously because building towards the first version of stability that tends to produce more pressure over time. Building toward the second tends to produce more freedom. Let me describe something that I have seen play out many, many times. Someone builds a successful business or career through consistent hard work and genuine capability. Income grows, the business becomes established. From the outside, it looks stable. But when you look more closely at the inside, that stability is held together by the person at the center of it, by their hours, their energy, their constant attention. Remove them from the equation, even temporarily, and the income starts to wobble. A holiday becomes a source of anxiety rather than a rest. An illness produces not just physical discomfort, but very real financial concern. And a difficult personal period, the kind that everybody experiences at some point, that lands in the middle of a business that has no capacity to absorb it. I worked with someone, we'll call her Helen, and Helen had built up a genuinely impressive consultancy over the course of, I think it was about 7 years. Strong reputation, good clients, consistent income. She described it as successful, and by many measures it was. But Helen had never taken more than a few days off without her laptop. She'd worked through a family bereavement the previous year because she couldn't see how to stop. And when I asked her what would happen to the business if she needed to step back for a month, she looked genuinely uncertain. Business was successful, but it wasn't stable. It was dependent on her presence, on her effort, on her constant input. That dependency, however hidden it is behind good revenue numbers, that's the opposite of financial stability. And for overachievers, it is, I have to say, remarkably common. Because the same drive and capability that builds the business also makes it easy to avoid building the structures that would make it less dependent on the person behind it. Here's something to think about. Think about your own income and the structures beneath it. If you stepped back from your work for a month, I mean genuinely stepped back, not just worked a little less, but genuinely stepped back for a month, what would happen to your income? Be honest. And if the honest answer is that it would suffer significantly, or if the question itself produces feelings of anxiety in you, what does that tell you about how stable that stability actually is? Worth thinking about. I would like us to draw a distinction here. There's hustle-based income and there's system-based income. Hustle-based income depends on an ongoing effort. You have to keep showing up, keep producing, keep generating. You stop and it stops. Now, it can be substantial, it can feel good, but it is fundamentally contingent on your continuous output. System-based income, now that depends on structures, on offers that are clearly designed and reliably delivered, on positioning that generates inbound interest rather than requiring constant outbound effort. It depends on relationships and reputation that work on your behalf even when you are not actively working. It depends on processes that reduce the cognitive load of each engagement and allow consistent quality without requiring everything to be rebuilt from scratch every single time. System-based income is what financial stability actually looks like when it's built well. Not passive income in the oversimplified sense. It does still require work, attention, and genuine effort, but effort that is directed at building and maintaining something rather than effort that is the thing itself. There's the difference. The overachiever who builds systems alongside their delivery, that person creates something that can sustain periods of reduced input without falling apart. Something that holds up through the variations and disruptions that life inevitably produces. That's the version of stability that is worth building towards. Here is why overachievers don't build systems, even when they understand they should. comes back to something we have visited several times across this recent batch of 12 episodes: identity. For many overachievers, the effort is not just a means to an end, it's part of how they understand themselves. Working harder, being consistently available, being the person everything runs through. They're not just habits, they're identity expressions. Building systems, delegating, structuring, reducing their own centrality, that can feel at some level like stepping back from something that really matters, like becoming less essential. It can feel like giving up the thing that makes them valuable. And that's a version of the same pattern that we explored in Series 1 back in episodes 7 and 8. The fusion of identity and output. The sense that what you do and who you are have become the same thing. When that fusion is in place, building systems doesn't feel like a commercial strategy. It feels like a threat to the self. And threats to the self, they get resisted, even when the resistance is commercially costly. The shift, as always, starts with awareness. Noticing when the reluctance to step back from the center is actually an identity response rather than a practical one. Or noticing when staying essential is serving the ego rather than serving the business. It starts with awareness of all of those, and then asking with genuine open curiosity, what would it mean for the business and for me if it needed me a little bit less? For most overachievers, the honest answer to that question is better than they expect. Building financial stability without burnout doesn't require a complete overhaul of how you work. Thank goodness. It tends to happen gradually through a series of deliberate, small shifts. The first is documenting what you do. Not an exhaustive, detailed list, but enough that someone else could at least understand the process. Most overachievers carry an enormous amount of their business in their heads. Decisions, processes, criteria, knowledge has never been made explicit. It's all carried in their head. Making it explicit is the first step towards making it transferable. Document it. Get it out of your head and onto paper. The second thing the second small shift is identifying where the dependency is the greatest. Where is the business most vulnerable if your input reduces? That's usually where the system building needs to start. And the third thing is to build one thing at a time, not redesigning everything simultaneously. Hey, that's just another version of the overachiever trap, right? Taking on too much and ending up with nothing finished. One process, one structure, one piece of the business made more robust. And once you've done that one thing and completed that one thing, on to the next one, and so on and so on. Sustainable stability is built gradually, but it is built. And each piece of structure that goes in makes the whole thing just that little bit more resilient, a little bit less dependent on constant heroic efforts to hold it together. In the next episode, we begin Series 3, and the focus shifts once again. We spent Series 1 exploring the internal psychology of overachievement. We have spent Series 2 exploring the commercial and financial dimensions. And in Cycle 3, we're going to go deeper into some of the specific patterns that drive overachievers hardest and cost them the most as a result. And we start with the one that will be immediately familiar to a whole host of you: perfectionism. Not as a personality quirk or as a humble brag, but as a genuine pattern that quietly shapes decisions, delays actions, and has a cost that most perfectionists have never fully examined. That's episode 25, The Perfectionism Trap. I think it'll feel like a meaningful and recognizable place for us to begin the next series. That's coming up next in the next episode. But here's something for you to take as we close series 2. Think about the income and business or career that you are building. If everything stayed exactly as it is, the same model, the same structures, the same level of dependency on your constant effort, where would you be in 5 years? Not in terms of the numbers, but in terms of how you would be feeling. How sustainable would it be? How free would you actually be if you continued with the same models, same structures? If your honest answer gives you pause for thought, what's the one thing that needs to change the most? Hopefully today's episode has resonated with you strongly. I would love it if you would take a moment to leave us a review or a rating on your favorite platform. And remember to give us a like, a share, a subscribe. It genuinely helps other people to find the show. Share it with someone you think would benefit. And as I say, if you haven't already, hit follow or subscribe so that you are with us for every single episode. Once you finish this episode, head over to keithbn.link/top, where you can find all of the episodes, including this one, and inside that you'll find the show notes, along with some additional resources to explore this topic a little bit further. I'm Keith Blakemore Noble, the Overachievers Coach, and I will be your guide as we explore a healthier way to succeed. See you next time.